endurance leadership really as an individual. We're all going through it right now. And then you come into an organization, leaders, managers, executives, et cetera. Let me just say this. Not only do we as individuals need to have endurance, but also the organizations in which we operate need its own set of endurance. And these aid stations, they sort of work on both levels, right? There's a great quote that said, I think it's Jiddu Krishnamurti. He said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick system." Wow. So we need to not only just as individuals within those organizations, as leaders within the organizations, but we need to make sure that our organizations themselves are designed in a way that we can lead at a human pace. And I think that's a real big key phrase there, leading at a human pace.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the founder and CEO of Culture Shift Advisors, Tony Loyd, going to be helping with the exhausting churn of our time. That way the leaders can endure pressure, adapt with clarity, and lead with confidence. So excited to have you on. Tony, how you doing?
I am amazingly good.
That is so great to hear. So excited to have you on. Tell us more about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into what you're doing today?
Yeah, I was a former Fortune 500 executive. I worked with organizations like John Deere, Medtronic, Buffalo Wild Wings, other brands that people would recognize. In 2014, I took early retirement. I started mentoring social entrepreneurs, so people who are using their business to do social good. They were telling me some great stories, and I started capturing those stories in a podcast called Social Entrepreneur. We did about 300 and something episodes. We wrapped that up at around May of 2022. I also have been a member of boards for nonprofits. I'm working with an organization called Mile on My Shoes. We bring runners from the community, and we run with people who are in drug rehab centers, who are in homeless shelters, people who are in prison reentry programs, and it just build community. We learn from them. They learn from us. It's an amazing program. I'm on the board of that nonprofit. And then in April of last year, less than a year ago, I went through a thing, right? We all have these seasons, right, where we go through a thing. And April of last year, I was going through a divorce, which isn't a pleasant experience for anybody. Nobody wants to go through that. The first day that I moved into my apartment was April 29th of 2025. And I'm like, all of my worldly goods are coming into this little 2-bedroom apartment, right? It's one of those days, you don't want to have one of those days very often.
Right.
And I'm standing in my living room, and I get a notification that I have a message from my doctor, and I look in there, and it says, "You have a pulmonary malignancy," which means I have lung cancer. It's like, well, that's a day. So in that moment, I kind of thought, what do you do? How do you endure when the bottom falls out? You know, when everything you thought you could count on is gone. And right now, like every American, especially, all the institutions that we thought we could count on, they seem to be questionable right now. The ground that we're standing on seems shaky. And I set out to answer that question, what is the definition of endurance? Now, let me just, one more thing before I turn it back over to you. I'm also an endurance athlete. I run marathons and ultra marathons. And so I sort of took this concept about what does it take to be an endurance athlete? What does it take for us to endure these strange times that we're in right now? And then what does that look like in leadership? How does that show up? We have everyone who comes to our jobs, they're going through the same strange world experience that we're all going through. And then when you put them into this complex social construct called an organization or a company, the level of complexity goes up. And then you take someone from achieving results to achieving results through others. Now it's really complicated. As individuals, first-line supervisors, as middle managers, as executives, endurance is important to all of us right now. So I'll pause right there, and I'll turn it back over to you, and then we can talk about that a little bit.
That's wonderful, Tony. Thank you so much for sharing. One, an incredible journey that you've been on. Two, I didn't know all the work that you've done has been so community focused and just that give back. I can tell you're a fantastic person. So thank you for that. And now the fact that you're helping these other businesses at a time where the workforce is changing, AI is coming into play. Like you said, there's just different factors in the world that are causing either chaos or instability, and people are kind of looking for light at the end of the tunnel. They want direction. And we found this opportunity to help the leaders be better and to now impact the organization and help employees all around. Yeah. So thank you. Tell me more about that work, about the people that you're working with. That's incredible. Yeah. Please continue. That was amazing.
Yeah. I partnered with a woman named Jennifer Wiseman. She has a master's degree in social work. She is a licensed psychotherapist. She's a published author. She has more letters after her name than I have in my name, one of those kind of things. So she's quite brilliant. And so she and I are searching the research to say, what does the research tell us about how people endure in the middle of all of this? I also want to sort of contrast this to the idea of resilience. So resilience is this idea that you get knocked down and then you have a moment and you rest and you recover and you stand back up. But what happens when you're getting knocked down, right? No, I'm in the rock tumbler. That's where I am. Like the rocks are all around me and they're hitting me from every direction and I don't know which way is up. And this is crazy, right? Now we know based on our research, if you look at the rate of change that has happened in the world, you mentioned AI, so it's really accelerating things. But if you go all the way back to 2000 BC, agrarian society, change happened maybe in cycles or in seasons. Maybe you had a wet season or a dry season. Maybe the Huns came over the hill, then 10 years later the Huns went back over the hill. So you were facing things, but there was a moment to recover. So change is no longer episodic. It doesn't happen once and then it goes away and lets you catch your breath and come back. So we need something more than resilience. We need endurance. How do you endure when the challenges never end? So we've done some research. We've come up with these 5 pillars, but we don't call them pillars. I'm a distance runner. I'm a ultramarathoner. And in ultramarathons, they have these things called aid stations. And an aid station is like an oasis in the middle of the thing, and you've run 20 miles so far, and you got another 80 to go, and there's this aid station, and you can just stop in there, and you can put tape on your beat-up feet, and you can get some watermelon, and you can just like peanut butter sandwiches are going fast. And so we think about these like as aid stations, these sort of stopovers on the journey. And I'd be glad to walk you through all 5 of the aid stations that we've discovered in what we're calling endurance leadership. But I just want to pause and give you a chance to jump in with questions.
No, I appreciate that. And that's wonderful. And I'm drawing these parallels now because it again, at work, sometimes when I've worked for employers, it can feel like we're doing a sprint, but at a marathon. And it feels like we're going way too fast. We're getting beat up. And that in time, I mean, we're not as effective. No. Morale goes down. Yep. So it feels like this aid station can be utilized in the workplace to almost give us a break and re-energize, recharge so we can finish that race strong instead of struggling.
Right. And it happens in layers. Endurance leadership, really, as an individual, we're all going through it right now. And then you come into an organization, leaders, managers, executives, et cetera. So not only, let me just say this, not only do we as individuals need to have endurance, but also the organizations in which we operate need its own set of endurance. These aid stations, they sort of work on both levels, right? There's a great quote that said, I think it's Jiddu Krishnamurti. He said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick system." Wow. So we need to not only just as individuals within those organizations, as leaders within the organizations, but we need to make sure that our organizations themselves are designed in a way that we can lead at a human pace. And I think that's a real big key phrase there, leading at a human pace. But let me just give you the 5 aid stations. Yeah, so the first one is calm. And this is a verb. This is not a state of being, it's a verb. How do you calm yourself? So polite that they're going to drag them over to your feed and they're going to put them out there so that you can be outraged too, right? It seems like outrage is our favorite flavor right now. And I'm in Minneapolis right now, and there's a lot of activity happening here. Both if you're pro-government, you're saying, well, ICE is coming in and taking out illegal aliens. If you're pro-civil rights, you have a lot of people who are protesting some of the tactics being used here in the Twin Cities. There's a lot to be outraged about. But if you're in this perpetual set of outrage, if that's your state all the time, you can't reach your higher order thinking. You can't function correctly. So calm is how leaders regulate stress. They create stability under pressure. We always say, the research says that chaos spreads rapidly through an organization, but so does calm. When an executive or a business leader walks into a room, within microseconds, the team that reports to him or her will reflect their emotional state. The mirror neurons will turn on. And if you walk in and you're in chaos, they're going to pick up on it. If you're in calm, they're going to pick up on that too. So that's the first one, is calm. The second is clarify. And this is about getting clear on your purposes and values. When you know your how or your why, you can do anyhow. Let me say that again. When you know your why, you can do anyhow. So the second thing we say is clarify your values. This is how leaders align meaning, values, and guide and give directions based on that. And then there's change. I just had a conversation last week with a member of a Rotary Club, and he said when he joined the Rotary, they did not allow women. And I go, gosh, how long ago was it? Oh, he said it was the late 80s. That wasn't that long ago.
Right.
And if they would not have changed, they would not have survived as an organization. So change is about being flexible. It's about allowing yourself to pivot when you need to pivot and to change directions when you need to. And then there's connect, which is really important. If you really want to build endurance, resilience, endurance is a team sport. When it comes to runners, we often think of the lone wolf out on the trail. So untrue. Runners love community. We post our stuff on this thing called Strava so everybody else can weigh in on our, it's Facebook for runners or something. And then we run in groups and we run in teams and all that. Every week I run with a group called the Twin Cities Running Club, and we're kind of a coffee group that also runs.
Great.
So,
two great things together, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So then the last thing is continue, and it's about how you build habits. It's about how you see yourself as an endurance person. And it starts with identity, and then that identity sort of informs your habits, and it goes from there. So those are the 5 aid stations: calm, clarify, change, connect, and continue. We have a self-assessment that I just got off of the Zoom call, and we're developing it. It's about to launch pretty soon. We have these little micro practices that we have discovered that you can utilize each of these aid stations to build your endurance. So anyway, I won't talk anymore. I'll just turn it back over to you.
No, Tony, that is wonderful. Thank you for the practical tips and sharing just the basis and the foundation of what we should be focusing on. And I absolutely love that the first one is the calm, because it's the emotional regulation and the reaction that is changing how we make decisions. And yes, if we're in a state of chaos or uncertainty, that spills over into our communication, how we interact with people, even our decisions.
Yeah.
So that emotional regulation is so important. What we could accomplish if we just thought more logically and less reaction towards emotions, because it really, gosh, I mean, I'm getting amped up just thinking about emotions, you know?
Right. Yeah. It is interesting. We made a chart at one point to say, what's a reactive leader look like and what does an endurance leader look like? And when you contrast those two and you see, it's like if you've ever had a toxic boss, that's what's happening there, right? They are dysregulated. And so that spills over into the entire organization.
That is absolutely incredible. And you've done so much work with other, nonprofit organizations, those who are helping the community. Is that also your main focus right now? Or are you kind of helping a specific industry or, they're experiencing certain problems that you go in to help solve?
Right. So I really do think that leadership burnout is kind of a crisis right now. So what happens is there's accelerated rate of change. Like I kind of started off saying 10,000 years ago, there wasn't that much change. Well, around 1947, when the transistor was invented and you could suddenly shrink electronics small, that was sort of an inflection point where the rate of change shot straight up, and you had all these other inventions that came behind it: speakerphone, computer touchscreen, etc. Then in 2007, Apple put all those technologies together into the iPhone. And then today in 2026, we're all walking around with an AI-driven supercomputer in our pocket. And so that rate of change, it's hard for us as individuals to absorb. Leaders are under all kinds of pressure. I talked to somebody about, the policies and the regulations, we're not sure what they are today. Are the tariffs on? Are they off? We don't know. So our supply chain is disrupted. We don't know what's happening with that. Can we buy from this country or that? We're not sure. We don't have the talent we need because we have so many people who are like shifting their industry right now with AI coming in. We're under pressure from our board then and this is the client speaking, we're under pressure to integrate AI with everything we do. So there were so many pressures coming from so many ways. What happens is with all this constant disruption, people begin to feel like the world is unstable. We become fatigued, and that leads to leadership burnout. It's where we want to come in and help you break that cycle. When things start to feel like the world is unstable, that's when you should call us, because we can come in and help you to work on the endurance and the stability of the organization.
Especially at a time when AI is rapidly evolving. Like you said, the board is pressuring them to start implementing AI.
Yeah.
They may not know where to start or what's even capable with a lot of these tools out there. But I think just as, the introduction to AI was similar to the introduction of the production line. Jobs changed. Sure, we lost some. Things became more efficient, but then new jobs and opportunities opened up. And I think, trying to navigate that storm in a more calm demeanor, I think is just going to help us make more practical decisions moving forward.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And Tony, where can people find you and connect with you online?
Yeah, you have to be able to spell my last name correctly. So that's the only trick, right? My name is Tony, last name is Loyd. And so they can find me at tonyloyd.com. We also have other website, cultureshift.com or others. But if you just look for Tony Loyd, TonyLoyd, and spell it that way, you could just search for me. You'll find me on all the social media. You'll find me on tonyloyd.com and other places around the internet.
Very nice. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description with the proper spelling of Loyd as well, so everyone can easily get connected with Tony here. Tony, wanted to ask your experiences. A lot of our experiences are shaped through mentors or mentorship, people we've looked up to. Wanted to ask if there were any big impactful mentors throughout your life that kind of like changed the trajectory and just kind of amplified your results.
Yeah, honestly, Chris, my life is a result of people saw me, they liked me, they knew of an opportunity, and they introduced me. That was it. That's my entire career path. Now, if a high school counselor would have described my career path, somebody would have come and taken them away, right? I went from I was a truck driver at one time, I was a janitor at one time when I was younger, and then I was what's called a health physicist. It's somebody who measures radiation contamination, sets environmental protection measures. I worked in that space. I was recruited out of there to teach people how to do that kind of stuff. I was recruited out of there to teach people other things that went beyond nuclear power. Where I was working, I worked with the Department of Energy, Department of Defense. I worked with commercial nuclear power. And then eventually I worked with John Deere and Buffalo Wild Wings, Medtronic, all these other major corporations. Nobody could have described that career path for me. And the only reason that it worked was because somebody saw me, somebody liked me, they were nice to me, they introduced me to an opportunity. I literally have never had a job that I went out and applied for. I mean, somebody found me and goes, oh, yeah, you'd be good for this job. And then they moved me there. I could name them. There's a lot of people. Here's the one thing I would say, advice-wise and with mentors. On my first consulting role I had, I was off in southern Florida. I was doing this consulting work, and there was a bunch of junior consultants standing around, and I was one of them. And there was an older guy there, a guy named Pete. He said, listen, if you'll be kind to people on the way up, they're going to be kind to you on the way back down. And I really took that to heart. So whatever you're doing, It only takes a nanosecond to be kind to somebody. I think that was probably the best advice I ever got, and it took me a long way.
That is some great advice, and I sure hope that a lot of other people take that advice to heart and exude kindness to others in the same way that they would want to be treated as well. Tony, we have a few more minutes. Wanted to ask, what are you looking forward to in 2026? You've built this incredible path already. What are you looking forward to for the coming year?
Yeah, I'm enjoying some new speaking opportunities. I'm doing some keynotes. I am doing some executive coaching right now. I have a couple of clients on that, and now we're offering like workshops and other audits. We have some assessments we're developing. There's an entire raft of offerings that are coming out of this idea about endurance leadership. So really, to tell you the truth, Chris, I was sort of like fading away after the podcast. I was like, okay, I'm old. I've done enough. I'm just going to back out the door here. And then cancer and all the other circumstances of my life, it just changed the trajectory. So now I'm re-engaged. I'm back in the game, and I'm just really looking forward to more.
That is fantastic. Sorry for the situation and circumstances, but it feels like it's giving you more drive and purpose. We get knocked down, but we can't be down for long. The more we can put ourselves out there, find that purpose and inspire and help others. Just based on our conversation, I know you're having an impact with a lot of other people and businesses. So please keep up that great work. Of course, I understand if you want to retire and go to Cancun, totally understandable. However, we appreciate all the work that you're doing, and congratulations on everything you've done.
Thank you. I'll mention one more thing. I just probably should have said this. I'm using myself as a personal laboratory about endurance. On September 24th of 2025, they removed 25% of my lungs. So half of my left lobe is gone. And I am training for the Age Group World Championship Marathon in Cape Town, South Africa in May of 2026. So May 24th, 2026, I'm going to go to Cape Town. I'm going to run a marathon in this Age Group World Championship. So yeah, I'm using myself as a laboratory of one to go, does this endurance stuff really work?
Well, you're putting it to the test, and it seems like based on the data, it's worked for other people, and you're just going to continue living this life. If I can make it happen, let's endure it, find that light at the end of the tunnel, and just keep powering through it. That was wonderful. Tony, thank you again for coming on. One more minute if you wanted the floor for any other advice. Thank you again for that other kind of like closing statement, but just wanted to open it up as well for you.
I'd say, honestly, I don't have anything else that I want to drop
great already.
People. Yeah.
You obviously listened to a few shows, or at least followed some of the notes, because you followed the structure of everything so great already. So Tony, thank you again for sharing your wisdom, tips, and tricks with us. And congratulations on your continued success.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.